Happy 2023, everybody. Welcome to the first meeting of Rotary Club of Des Moines in the new year. I'm President-elect Becky Greenwald, filling in for the vacationing Matt Busey. So we'll see where in the world is Matt next week. Oh, there we go. And as a reminder, our Rotary year runs from July 1 until June 30th. So we haven't changed officers yet. I'm just stepping in temporarily. Today we want to welcome 5 guests. I'll ask our guests to stand and remain standing when I call your name to be recognized. Down, is that better? You can hear me all right back there? Good, okay. Good, so if you would remain standing, and I'll ask all of our members to hold their applause until we have all 5 guests introduced. I think we have 4 guests now. So first of all, Cliff Hanks, Senior Vice President of Sandler Global, a guest of Sean Mullen. Ed Arnold with the Northwest Rotary Club and Iowa Wolves and Polio Now event champion. And I have to say, Alex Barker with the Iowa Wolves couldn't join us today because he had somebody coming to town. And that's A-Rod. You know what I'm talking about? The A-Rod is in Des Moines right now. That's where Alex is, instead of meeting with us. He's also, A-Rod is also the new owner of the Iowa Wolves. So I guess we understand why he couldn't make it, but so glad you're here, Ed. Okay, Laura Porter with the director of the Iowa Architectural Foundation. Hi, Laura. And Chuck Kuba, former member, hopefully returning member, with the Iowa Diamond. Please welcome all of our guests. Thank you so much. And now Bob Vedral will share a moment of inspiration and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the 4-way test.
We just came through the holiday season where we have time with friends and family, able to reflect upon the year that has just passed, looking forward to the future. But we also should always remember one another, because life is precious. 2 weeks ago, this Friday, up pops on my phone the name of my friend Tom. And he always calls me on my birthday, which is at the end of January. And I call him on his birthday, which is in February. Hi, Tom. And I hear tears. It's not Tom. It's Karen, his wife. I saw on his phone a reminder to call you, that he was going to call you on his birthday. I must tell you that Tom passed away the previous week. And I said, Karen, I was in shock. I said, what happened? He took his own life. He suffered from depression. He would not seek help. And she went away for a little bit, and he followed through on his act. I was so sad. I called 2 people, Ann Starr and my dear friend Christina Smith, because I just felt I had to verbalize this loss. Because I remember telling Karen about when Tom and I be in a meeting at Prudential Real Estate Affiliates and the executive would be talking and we felt things were going a little bit anal. We'd make a face and go, like that. Or the time that we were in Lincoln City, Oregon, visiting an affiliate. And Tom got silly as a goose on 2 drinks made with ice cream. So I remembered that. So be aware of conversations. If somebody says, if I said to Becky, how you feeling? Oh, Bob, I'm really buried in this project and all that. Oh, me too. I understand. No, tell me about that. Because one of the things I do with my members, learning this from Ann, where they do at their sanctuary model, is how are you feeling? But with my members, I tacked on, how are you feeling emotionally? I'm going to miss not getting that call from my friend Tom on the 25th. But I found a poem I'd like to read to you. A Time to Believe by B.J. Moore Bitzer. To believe is to know that every day is a new beginning, is to trust that miracles happen and dreams really do come true. To believe is to see angels dancing among the clouds, to know the wonder of a stardust sky and the wisdom of the man in the moon. To believe is to know the value of a nurturing heart, the innocence of a child's eyes, and the beauty of an aging hand, for it is through their teachings we learn to love. To believe, to find the strength and courage that lies within us when it is time to pick up the pieces and begin again. To believe is to know we are not alone, that life is a gift, and it is our time to cherish it. To believe is to know that wonderful surprises are just waiting to happen, and all our hopes and dreams are within reach, if only we believe. If you join me to pledge allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now the four-way test.
Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Now please greet your fellow Ontarians.
Thank you.
Greetings. Good to see you. Good to see you as well. Hey, Mark.
Great to see everybody back in the new year. I just have a quick reminder that the tumblers came back recently, and they're sitting on our tables, and those of you that have the little green sticker on your badge means that you've pledged $150 to go towards our Rotary Club of Des Moines Foundation, which supports our Rotary Club scholarships and also our grants and other activities. So thank you for that, those of you that have pledged the $150, and then the suggested contribution today for others would be $3. We want to thank everyone for their contributions. So now we have a special announcement from the Iowa Wolves, and I want to introduce Ed and also Jeff Sickle to introduce the Wolves. So if you come up forward, we'd love to hear about the game coming up.
Well, I'll just introduce Ed, but most of you guys already know Ed, right? Right? Everybody say, hey, Ed! But anyway, he's an amazing, amazing guy. I get to spend once a month with him at our meetings. Please, please, please sign up for the basketball game. The flyers are on your tables. You can screenshot it. It makes it easy because they're trying to do it all digital, which Ed and I don't really like, but that's what they want. But most of us in our group, we usually get over 100. You can definitely donate the tickets. They'll print out the printed tickets, and I'll take them to the Oak Ridge kids. So thank you so much. Here's Ed.
Thank you, Dr. Jeff. Just gave my whole presentation. Justin, I've been doing this now for 14 years, and we've raised over $140,000 for polio eradication. And put that with the Gates, Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation match, that's $420,000, and that's enough to immunize 600,000 children. And we're doing really a tremendous job, I think. As you know, there's only 2 endemic countries left, Pakistan and Afghanistan, and there were only 28 new cases last year. So that's more than 5 the year before, but I think we're in the right direction. I think in the last 5 months, there's probably only been 3 new cases worldwide. So they're getting this close and maybe even a little closer. But as Jeff said, there's a flyer on your desk. If you know how to sign up digitally, I'm going to take the liberty to tell you to ask Kitty. Kitty will show you how to sign up. So, Jeff and I aren't very good at that, but there's a couple of things going on. There's a concert by Shane Prophet after the game. It's included in the price of the ticket. He's an up-and-coming 22-year-old singer out of Nashville, country western guy. $2 beer night for any of you guys interested in $2 beer. We started this about 6 years ago, and they gave away a 6-ounce beer for $2. And we pushed back a little bit on that, so now you get a 12 or 16-ounce beer for $2. So it's a little better deal than what it was. It's $2 beer night, koozie giveaway, country western night. Sign up, and as Jeff mentioned, you've got a couple of charities that you give tickets to, and that's always greatly appreciated. Chris is going to speak, and I know her group gets some tickets from a couple of the other Rotary clubs. So if you don't have a specific group that you want to give to, the Iowa Wolves have a whole list of people that they routinely give tickets to. So that's always greatly appreciated. But please help us. We'd like to sell. Actually, we'd like to sell 1 ticket per every Rotarian, but 2 is much nicer. And our goal has always been 1, and we've always come a little under that goal, believe it or not. So if you can buy a couple tickets, the best thing to do is use them yourself. And if you don't use them, give them to a family friend, or best yet, give them to a kids organization that would be glad to use them. Thank you very much for your past support.
Thank you, Ray. It's great to see you here each year, and I want to give special thanks to Jeff Stickle for serving as our Rotary Club of Des Moines committee member on the Iowa Wolves Committee. So thank you very much for that. You see a lot of us out there at the Wolves game. A few announcements to cover here. First of all, it's a new year, and we have got simplified new member incentive to talk about. So applications submitted this month through June 30th will simply have an incentive of reducing the dues to 50% for the 6 months, or the first 6 months of their membership, plus we're waiving the induction fee. We want to talk just a second or two about communication, and we really have a goal, a team working on that in our board, to increase our social media presence and making use of hashtags that really reference Rotary and our club. So you can see there are several of these hashtags that you may choose to add if you are a social media person and want to use them. And there'll be information about this in the newsletter as well. And we also want to remind our members that if you are a social media person and you'd like to take photos and post them to your website and use our hashtags to clear our club, we can do that. And we are on, maybe we're not showing you the various social.
Oh, they were there. It's
There
just
we
going
go.
crazy.
So you have an assortment of things to choose from. This too will be in the club, and our committee is working to continue to make this easier and easier for folks. And if you're just somewhere and you can take a picture of you in action with Rotary, take a photo and send it on. Send it to Kitties. Send it to me. Send it to Matt. We'd like to get those out there so people see that we are definitely a Rotary Club people in action. So now,
Can you see the hashtag one more
oh
time?
sure,
Thank you.
Oh, no.
get back to that quote. That's good. There we are. Excellent. Ooh, we can see our mentions already increasing. Thanks, Claudia. So as your president-elect, I am just delighted that I get to host this year's February Flame. So I'm going to ask you to please save the date and mark your calendars for Friday evening, February 17th. I invite you all and your guests to join us for a special Rotary Club of Des Moines evening at the Greater Des Moines Botanical Garden, starting at 6:30. You know, it's fun to visit the Botanical Garden year-round, but it's really a special treat in the winter when it's cold outside and you can go in and warm up with all that tropical greenery around you. So we have a chance to experience that. Plus, in addition to enjoying great conversation with our fellow Rotarians and their guests, drinks, and of course hors d'oeuvres, in the comfort of our own meeting room at the Botanical Gardens, you'll have the opportunity to stroll about the conservatory, also known as Under the Dome, and also the Gardener's Show House, and see the amazing After Dark winter event that they host, where they feature unique lighting displays. So again, I really hope that you plan to join us for a fun evening of Rotary Fellowship with our guests, and also let you know that more information will be following, and you'll get a little invitation in the mail very soon. So now, I'd like to turn it to our guest speaker, our keynote, and that person will be introduced by Chris Anderson.
Thank you, Becky. Well, I'm very excited to be able to introduce Chris Copeland today. I can speak firsthand that she's extremely passionate about the mission of the organization and also the culture for the employees. But she's so focused that she doesn't have a bio. I went to her and I asked, I said, how do you want me to introduce you? And she said, oh, you'll figure it out. She's my boss. How much pressure is that? It's like going home and your spouse says, where do you want to go eat? Oh, I don't care. So I said, all right, I've got to put on my thinking cap. So I went where most of us go, where we think the best. And I started scrolling and started writing as many notes as I could. So bear with me while I go through my notes. No, that's a grocery list. That's a to-do list. But no, seriously, Chris actually hails from Fort Dodge. She got her undergraduate degree from Central College. She joined Youth Homes of Mid-America in 1996. With the exception of a short stint with Magellan Agency, and also earning her master's degree at the University of Iowa, go State. She's been with the organization since 1996. It's absolutely phenomenal. She's worked her way up all the way to the position of CEO, and under her leadership, in August of 2001, Youth Homes of Mid-America joined and merged with Youth Emergency Services and Shelter, also known as YES, to create the new organization, Ellipsis. Ellipsis, with the merger, has created such a very large continuum of care that this area of central Iowa is so needed for the kids and families. So if you'll please welcome the CEO of Ellipsis, Chris Copeland.
Toilet paper is impressive, thanks. And honestly fits right in with our culture, so it's a way to get that started. I would normally not start on, we'd flip past the title slide, but I think it's really important to recognize our mission, which we actually just landed on a handful of months ago because the merger happened August of 2021. So it feels very new, even though that's a year and a half ago. We're still working through some of our integrative things, but our mission now is we help kids and families build healthy relationships so they can write their own story. And I think it's really important to kind of stop for a second and think about what that really means. And for us, it's about the fact that our kids and families really need help with that, right? So the healthier your relationships, you all know this, it's why you're in this room every Thursday, right? That your relationships are really important and they have a lot to do with your success in life. So just wanted to kind of hone in on that for a second. Before I move on, Mark Lyons, I need to say thank you for getting us here. Mark's been on our board, was on the Youth Homes board for quite a while, signed up to at least get us going with the merger, and is leaving our board now, but I know won't be leaving us from the perspective of support, so I appreciate you, thanks. And we're gonna see if I can actually make the pointer work. No, it's the power button, isn't it? Technology is also not our specialty. You got it. Thank you. I'm going to let you if that's okay. So, how many of you have heard of Youth Homes of Mid-America in the past, besides Mark and Christina? Oh, nice. This is unusual. This doesn't usually happen in a room. And how many of you have heard of YES? That's usually the one that gets more hands. Youth Homes didn't always have a long reputation of really being integrated in the community and really being well known, so I love seeing your guys' hands go up. I like to put this slide in here now because I think we're still sort of struggling to make sure people understand who Ellipsis is. So prior to today, had you heard of Ellipsis? There we go. Far fewer, right? If you've ever done something like this, you know that branding can be difficult and getting things out in the public can be difficult, and we want to make sure that we're doing that. So the more help you can give us there, the better, as people are talking to you about what's going on in the community. Really quick history, Youth Homes of Mid-America was actually founded in 1943. as the YMCA Boys Home. There was a connection to the YMCA for several years. In 1987, we changed our name, I'm gonna move the podium, to Youth Homes of Mid-America because we also were serving girls at that point, go figure. Yes was actually founded as Iowa Runaway Service in 1973, and in 1984 changed their name to Youth Emergency Services and Shelter, recognizing the fact that they were doing much more than just runaway and emergency shelter for kids and families. Okay, we can go. So who are we and what are we really doing? We currently have a staff, this number changes every day as it probably does at the places you all work also, but we have a staff of 164 employees. Most of those staff are working in our residential programs 24/7 to staff the facilities where we have kids that are living with us for short periods of time. We're at 3 different locations, so you will recognize the Johnston campus is the old Youth Homes of Mid-America. We reference the shelter building now on Southeast 11th as our South Campus. And we have another, our Park Transitional Living Unit, and obviously a bunch of community-based locations, which I'll get to as we talk about services. At any given time though, we're serving 750 or more kids and their families. So when you think about, a kid and the family that comes along with them, we're serving thousands of people at any given time that are in a lot of need and in a world of hurt sometimes, as we talked about with the reflection. I think it's really important to recognize why our kids are with us, what they come to us for, what our families need. Most of our kids have been through a significant amount of trauma in their life, and that's everything from living with parents with substance abuse issues to suffering abuse and neglect to poverty, right, in terms of getting the things that they need. Most of our kids have struggled in school to do the things that are expected of them, and typically that's because they've learned the ability to develop survival skills. So we work really hard to help our kids understand that the things that you're doing that are getting you in trouble can actually be transformed into things that you're gonna do that are gonna help you be successful. So, their ability to really be resilient under a challenge, that's a great skill that we all wanna have as you think about the things you wanna do as adults. So that's really the core of the work that our staff are trying to do with those 750 kids and families in a variety of settings. This next slide really talks about the continuum that Chris referenced. So a lot of people are like, why merge? Why did that happen? What were you thinking? And this was at the core of the thought behind the merger being a good idea. So Yes was serving kids in particular spaces, Youth Homes was serving kids in particular spaces. Those kids came to both of our places often. Those kids were being served in shelter. They might come into our group care setting at the Youth Homes campus. And so the idea really was to create this continuum that allowed for kind of a no wrong door approach, right? Whatever a kid and family needs, when they call ellipsis, we can say, hey, we have this broad continuum, and if the thing you need isn't on that continuum, we're gonna send you to the place that can get you what you need. This is our slide that really, in my opinion, just explains our name, right? Like, what's an ellipsis? An ellipsis is the 3 dots that you use when you write. It's the pause that you take when you're trying to speak and get an idea across. So our idea is that we take a minute for kids and families in the space between what is and what's possible. So you're here now, you need a minute with us, that might be more than a minute. And then what does that look like? What do you want your future to look like? How do you decide how you want to write your own story? Next slide is just a quick picture of our senior team. I am really, really proud of this group, and Chris says I'm his boss, but I really would argue we function very clearly as a solid team of peers. We have a ton of experience on our senior team, and we're really, really lucky that these are the people that are leading the charge. And even more importantly, at times, this is our board. So Mark's name isn't on there anymore, that's hard for me, but we have a handful of new people. Interestingly enough, we actually went from a board, when you think about the combined organizations, of 60 people down to a board of 18. As you can imagine, as the leader of that organization, firing your board members wasn't really fun. But there was a lot of really good conversation about what the board was going to need to do. There was going to be a heavy lift through merger. We've added some term limits, and I think really gotten to a place where we're trying to be very representative of our community and make sure that we have people who are creating impact, just like Mark did while he was with us. This is really just giving you guys kind of a picture of what are the operations teams, how do things work for us, and I'm gonna say a little bit more about each of these, but everything from shelter programming, which would be what we would consider a pretty low level of care, residential care, transitional living for kids who are aging out, our pediatric integrated health home, and then community-based services that include mental health therapy and some skill development. I think it's pretty important to talk about the fact that some of our kids are court-ordered into placement, some of our kids are connected to the now Health and Human Services, or to juvenile court services, but a lot of our kids and families are calling, saying, hey, we're struggling, our kid's struggling in school, or we're struggling to get along, or someone is, feeling depressed and anxious, and the need is so high right now. And so we're seeing kids come in from a variety of settings. So let's talk a little bit about residential. Our North Campus out in Johnston has 48 foster group care beds. So all of our residential settings currently are actually contracted services with the state of Iowa, so those kids are coming in on a court order. That doesn't always feel really good, right? So kids are coming and they're forced to be with us, and our staff have to work really hard to develop the relationships to get them to trust the fact that we actually are attempting to help them. 48 boys are out on that campus, and then we have 20, I'm looking at the slide to see if it's there, 20 shelter beds at our South Campus that used to be the Yes Shelter. And additionally, we serve 18 kids in cluster independent living. So at our Park Avenue location, we have 12 of those kids and another 6 in Johnston. Exciting news is that we're actually getting ready to, through a nonprofit innovation grant with ARPA funds that the governor set aside, we are building 12 new efficiency apartments in the upstairs of the shelter building that are really legitimately going to be spaces that those kids deserve to live in. We have a lot of work to do around capital improvement, Mark can attest to, particularly our North Campus, pretty old buildings. When you're dealing with dollars that don't quite cover everything you want to do, those are the things that go first. And so we're very excited about what that's going to look like. And then additionally, we're serving some kids in independent living who are transitioning to adulthood, who are living in their own apartments, potentially with a friend, an old neighbor, a coach, maybe their own apartment. They can do this at the age of 16 and a half. So I always like to say, just take a second and picture yourself at 16 and a half. Some of us, that's harder to think back that far. And what your life looked like and whether you could have lived on your own. I absolutely could not have. And so, our staff are working with those kids to do their own grocery shopping, make their own meals, probably have a part-time job while they're going to school, and figure out what is adulthood really going to look like at quite a young age. All of the kids who are in our residential services are technically in a foster care placement with us. And so that's kind of how the funding works, that's how the rules work, that's how they can get from there to a foster family ideally. But there aren't a lot of foster families who want teenage kids. So just a thing to put in the back of your mind as you're thinking about how can you help. The next slide. And then we have all of our community-based services. So the Integrated Health Home Program is a program that's doing some kind of case management, care coordination, helping kids and families navigate the system. So if your kid is feeling depressed or really struggling in school or whatever, how do we navigate how to find those services? A lot of these kids have pretty significant mental health diagnoses, and the need is even greater than we've seen, over the, and you guys have probably seen this in your own communities. It's hard right now. There's a lot going on in terms of people's mental health, and the pandemic didn't help, and all the kinds of things that are around us right now. So we're seeing a lot of kids for mental health therapy, skill development. So some of our staff are going into families' homes and helping families figure out, like, how do we learn the stuff we need to learn so that we can function successfully and my kid can stay in my home. I had a note I wanted to make sure. I think, it's important to know, we often think kids in the system are different than the kids who are living around us in our own homes, in our own schools, in our own communities. And the reality is there's a lot of kids who need a lot of stuff right now. I'm actually working on an MBA right now, and I just had a supply chain class. And the hardest part is that the need for services right now is enormous. And the amount of therapists and clinicians and people who want to do the work that we can find is really, really low. So if you know anybody who's interested in this kind of work, highly encourage them to go to school and do what they need to do. Give us a shout, because we're hiring all the time, obviously. And I think my next slide is just a how can you help. So I'm so glad you guys started with a QR code. Most of you, if you've eaten out at any time in the recent past, you've seen a QR code for a menu. This is exactly the same. You literally can do it from the screen right now. But it will take you to kind of our How Can I Help page on our website, and you can navigate around from there. And then the other thing we've done, the timing could not have been worse. We just developed a series of videos that really tell the story so much better than I ever can, because they're people who've been through our services telling their own story. That's the QR codes that are sitting on your table, the list of 5. So if you want to take those with you, the stories that these people tell are fantastic, and really give you hope for what we're doing for kids and families now. And that's all I have, so I'm hoping you might have some questions. Yeah?
So what is your geography for services? Are you just central Iowa or all of the state?
Sure, so the question I'm told I'm supposed to repeat is, what's our geography for services? Are we just central Iowa or are we the entire state? Interestingly, probably 5, 6, 10 years ago, I would have said for sure we're the whole state. All the time we get kids from all over the place. And while that's still true, HHS has done a really good job of trying to place kids closer to home so that they have family engagement, so that we can continue to practice having kids at home and that kind of thing. So we have fewer kids from all the way across the state than we used to. But typically we're serving about a 15 county area from kind of Des Moines on down to the south. Yep.
Do the kids age out of the system, or how do they graduate from the foster care?
Yeah, the question is, do the kids age out of the system or how do they graduate? So yes and no. Some kids are aging out, right? And you probably have seen that in articles and heard it on the news and that kind of thing, that there's a lot of concern about kids who get to the point of turning 18 and they can be out of the foster care system now, and what do they do, right? So that's why independent living programs were suggested. That's why we're doing those kinds of things. But ideally, we're getting a kid early enough at the right time with the right kinds of things that that kid gets to return home and stays at home and goes on to live a healthy and happy life, and we're done, hopefully. Yes?
What would a day look like for one of the kids in, say, the 48-bed facility? Kind of
Sure.
give us a feel for what's going on and what the day's like.
Yeah, so the question is, what does a day look like in the life of a kid in residential, essentially? A lot like the lives of the kids that you guys have raised, right? So our kids, while they're living in a group setting, we try to make those fairly small. So most kids are living in a unit of about 8 kids. We have 2 staff on at any given time. They have a kind of structured day in the sense of, creating some structure and discipline for them. But also have a lot of free time and a lot of ability to hang their own stuff on their walls and, kind of express themselves the way they want to. But they're gonna get up and do some chores in the morning, they're gonna have breakfast in the unit, they're gonna go to school. Some of those kids are going to school on our campus. Johnston Schools actually runs a school on our campus in Johnston. Some of those kids are going to their home school because they can, so they might be getting on a bus or they might be getting a ride. They're going to school like every other kid you know. Many of our kids, when they're doing well, can participate in sports and activities at Johnston. So we've had kids on the football team and on a cheerleading squad and doing drama and music and those kinds of things. And then after school, often what's happening is we're doing some activities, but we're also doing skill development, therapy, the treatment pieces that kids really need to try to turn those survival skills into successful skills. That's happening in the evening hours. They're watching some TV, they're doing arts and crafts, they're playing some basketball, and they go to bed at the time that we tell them to go to bed. There's a lot going on in the sense that these are pretty high need kids, and so there's behaviors and there's things that are popping up that staff are having to deal with. They do a lot of crisis de-escalation, they do a lot of helping kids through an emotional time. But our kids are also spending some time at home ideally, so they're practicing being at home so that they can go back there and live. Does that help? You guys decide.
Okay, I was just gonna say, if there was some sort of service-based organization, perhaps in the city of Des Moines, that was looking for ways they can give back that aren't just monetary but physical, do you guys have things of that nature? Or
Yeah.
if there were organizations of that sort?
Yeah, so the question is, if service organizations are looking for ways to help other than monetary, what does that look like for us? We regularly have volunteer opportunities to do things like, as an example, recently we had to clear out the upstairs of the shelter so we could start construction, right? So we had a bunch of groups of people that came in and helped us clear those rooms, bring stuff down to storage. There's always things like folding and sorting donations. There's tons of donating opportunities in terms of clothes and things that you can imagine teenage kids go through pretty quickly, toiletries, all kinds of things like that. So Absolutely. I will give this note though, because I think historically there were opportunities to spend time with kids, and we've really tried to limit that because our kids they're living there, right? And it feels a little like a spectacle instead of to offer those opportunities. We are talking about how to develop a mentor program though, so that would have a lot of, you know, background checks and all the things that you would need to do for that. So, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. 2 questions. What is your annual budget, and as a sideline to that, what are your funding sources?
Yeah, so the question is, what's our annual budget and what are our funding sources? Our annual budget now combined is about a $12 million budget. I always like to tell people, because of residential care, about 85% of that is staff salaries and benefits, right? I mean, we have a lot of staff that we're having to cover 24/7. Funding sources, our major funding source is the state of Iowa, so our contracts with them cover most of that budget. I will tell you though, it doesn't cover the cost of what we're doing, and so Chris has the lovely job of doing fundraising in our community. And you know, that comes from a variety of sources. Some of that is corporate grants and corporate funding. A lot of it is individual donations, right? So when our letter comes out at the end of the year and we're begging you guys to help cover the cost of care, that's what that is. We do have some United Way funding. And what am I missing? That's probably it. Yeah.
Many years ago, I served on the board of your organization. It was still a youth home. And I remember at annual meetings, we bring in some parents and also maybe some former students, shall we say. And that was always such a pleasant thing, and because you really got to see the product and the benefits that were coming from what we were doing. And I just would encourage you, every time you have a chance, to point out some of your success stories, to do that, because most of us just see, you know, we have lots of opportunities to help organizations, but it's really good to be able to see how we made a difference. And so I'd encourage you to do that.
I appreciate that. We just had our first annual meeting for Ellipsis, and we did just that and gave an award to a young man named Nehemiah, and his story is in those stories on those videos. So if you want to check that out, that's exactly what we're attempting to do, right? It helps us connect the dots, sorry for the pun, but connect the dots on what our staff are really doing all day, every day. And their work is hard, right? And they're working long hours, and they're dealing with really difficult situations, and sometimes it's hard to see the light when kids are struggling in front of them. But when you get a few years down the road, we often have kids come back and tell us, I didn't realize it at the time, but I look back and I know that you were helping me, and you helped me learn this skill that I actually use every day. That's why we do what we do, right? Yeah.
Talked about de-escalation. What is the counseling you give around it? Because having maybe 8 kids in the same room, I imagine, you know, different views and so forth, and this is my stuff, not your stuff, and how do you educate them to say, you know, going on real life, that don't have to overreact to everything?
Yeah, the question is, how do we really do that de-escalation stuff, and what is it that we're working on with kids, or what do we teach them? You know, there's obviously some evidence-based curriculums that we use and have in place, which is probably boring for you guys, but there's a crisis prevention institute that teaches our staff, trains our staff really, like, first of all, how do you recognize that a crisis might be coming, right? So the signs that a kid is becoming agitated, or that, you know, something happened and you know you need to kind of remove them from the group so that you can calm things down, like all of those pieces. Everything from that up to how do you actually physically maintain a situation when you need to. And so, you know, our kids have learned to fight, and we deal with that sometimes. And then the other piece I would say is that skill development piece is really important, because we can cue kids into, hey, remember yesterday when we were working on that anger management skill, like, and we were role playing it? Well, now you're really in it, so let's see what that looks like in real life. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So is it necessary that you prove out a program's success, either as part of your funding contracts or how you think about efficiency of individual programs?
So the question is it necessary to prove out our success? Yes, and it's really difficult, right? So we're really in a space of talking about outcomes instead of outputs, right? Not just how many kids did we serve and how long did they stay, but what actually changed while they were with us. every kid that's with us is gonna have some kind of a treatment plan where we can say, here are the 3 things that we really think you need to accomplish while you're here. Did you? And so we talk about that both individually and in an aggregate way to kind of say, particularly to the state and to funders, hey, your dollars are being put to good use. We're good stewards of them, first of all, but also they're actually producing results. An interesting piece of that conversation, in my opinion, is how do we get to a place where we actually talk about long-term return on investment? So your ability to use these dollars to pay for this kid to get this service in this program right now might keep him from being in prison, might keep him from being on public assistance, might keep him from, and so all of those pieces about, it's not just like what's happening right now with this kid in this point in time, but what does that mean for us as a society? We talk a little bit about, my vision for us is that we cease to exist someday. And that's not gonna happen in my lifetime, most likely, but that's what we should be working towards, right, is how do we make a better community?
Chris, you had several questions about aging out. What about the other end of the spectrum? How young are the kids?
Yeah, so we try really hard in residential not to take kids younger than 11. We feel like foster families are ready to take kids in who are little, definitely babies, right, as those kids kind of come to the door. But in terms of services that are happening, like community-based services, therapy and BHIS, and I didn't repeat the question, but it was about age of kids that we serve. Those kids can be, anywhere from 3 and 4 and 5, up through elementary years. We're trying really to kind of say, if you can catch things early and figure out how to put some fixes in place, then hopefully that stays that way and you never see those kids in the system again. Yeah?
What's diversity look like for both your students and your staff?
The question is, what does diversity look like in both our kids and families and our staff? You might imagine that in our society there's an overrepresentation of minority populations, which is concerning and something that the system's really working hard around. I would say we do a really good job of trying to match our staff to our kids though. So we have a pretty diverse staff. I don't have percentages to really tell you. We track that. I don't have that off the top of my head. But I think it's really important that kids see people that look like them in the spaces that they're working. And so it's definitely important for us.
Well,
thank you.
So I definitely want to thank Chris for spending time with us in our club. And we thank you for sharing all of your message and the work that you're doing. Both Chris is here today. We appreciate your service and we're thankful for you and your work. So in recognition of the time that you've donated to us, we're giving a book in your honor to the Des Moines Public Library. The book will become part of the Rotary Rosie Reader Van collection. And this traveling library has reached scores of readers across Des Moines since 2020, when our club donated $40,000 to the library to finance its purchase and through the community service grant. So now, as we look at our upcoming meetings, take a minute to think about who do you know who would be an outstanding addition to our club, and invite him or her to join us as your guest. And remember that any time you and your guest wish to attend our meetings, you need to RSVP by 9 a.m. on the Wednesday before each meeting. January 19th, we're going to hear from Dr. Rochelle Kleck, Grandview University President. On January 26th, we'll hear from Kelly Garcia, formerly the Iowa Department of Public Health, but now the Department of Health and Human Services. February 2nd, the Polk County Supervisor Matt McCoy will be here, and we've got a twofer that day because our Rotary Club members, Elaine Estes and Hal Chase, will be presenting a program from 5:30 until 6:30 at the Des Moines Public Library Central Branch in accordance with Black History Month. So, 2 opportunities on February 2nd. Be sure to check out the flyers on Hal and Elaine's program on your flyers. I want to thank you for being with us today and for being part of the Rotary Club of Des Moines. We are adjourned and we'll see you back here next week.